Are big tech companies such as Google, Amazon, and Apple monopolies? Hey, it's Professor Grabowski here to talk to you about big tech and antitrust. As I briefly covered in my e-commerce lecture, Google, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, and Microsoft dominate tech, and the American economy for that matter. This dominance worries many people who say that these tech giants have become too powerful and that they got that way illegally. So now American lawmakers are taking action through lawsuits and legislation. Depending how things play out, these tech giants could be forced to sell off some of their subsidiaries or change the way they do business. For example, Facebook might be forced to unwind its acquisitions of Instagram and WhatsApp, or Google may have to change the way results and ads appear on its search engine. Now you might be wondering, can lawmakers do that? After all, the United States is supposed to be a free market economy, which means there is little interference from the government. And instead, consumers and businesses regulate commerce through supply and demand. If people don't like what these tech giants are doing, why don't they just start their own company? Well, the short answer is yes. There is a set of old, seldom used laws that allows the government to regulate companies if they become too powerful. More than a century ago, as the United States became industrialized, some large companies became so dominant in certain industries that they essentially eliminated all competition. In other words, they had a monopoly. Thus, these companies were able to engage in price gouging and all other types of bad business practices that hurt consumers. For example, oil tycoon John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil Company gained control of 90% of its market, allowing it to prevent competition, abuse employees, and engage in price fixing. So in response to this situation, Congress enacted what's known as antitrust laws to fix this problem. By utilizing an antitrust law known as the Sherman Act, the government was able to eventually force Rockefeller to sell off parts of his company to new owners. I should also note that, in addition to regulating monopolies, America's antitrust laws can also be used to regulate trusts, which is when multiple companies collude to control an industry. Now, to be clear, monopolies are not necessarily illegal, nor are they always bad. For example, water and electric companies often have monopolies in a particular local area that allows them to be the only company that provides their services. That's perfectly legal, and the government often regulates their prices to ensure they don't overcharge. However, monopolies can become problematic when there's not enough competition to ensure economic efficiency and consumer choice. And many people are worried that's what's happening with tech companies nowadays. Critics contend that Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft have accrued a tremendous amount of power and influence over their industries, and that makes competition from startups nearly impossible. That's why these five tech giants are sometimes referred to by the derogatory nickname of the frightful five. Consider these statistics. In the United States, Google is used for more than 90% of internet searches. 95% of young adults on the internet use a Facebook product, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, or WhatsApp. And 75% of sales of books occur on Amazon. In other markets, these firms may not have a monopoly, but instead they're part of a duopoly. For example, Google and Facebook share 60% of online ad spending. Google and Apple provide 99% of mobile phone operating systems. And Apple and Microsoft supply 95% of desktop operating systems. And these companies have become obscenely rich. A recent study found that if you examine certain key economic metrics, Apple and Amazon are wealthier than 90% of the countries in the world, including countries such as Italy, Canada, and Russia. Critics allege that these tech giants have cornered their markets by engaging in anti-competitive practices. For example, Google and Apple sometimes block competitor apps from being utilized by consumers by hiding them in search results or preventing them from being downloaded. Meanwhile, Amazon employees secretly mined sales data from independent sellers to help Amazon develop cheaper knockoff products. These are just a few of many, many examples of highly questionable business practices. As a result of this bad behavior, a growing number of critics believe these tech giants need to be broken up or regulated as Standard Oil was. In fact, this is a rare issue where both Republicans and Democrats seem to agree. Both sides think that these big tech companies have become too powerful.
What this is about competition. It's about all those little businesses and startup businesses and entrepreneurs who want to put their products on Amazon or on Google and who are at an enormous competitive disadvantage because Amazon or Google, if they like the money they see that you're making because they get all the information, they decide to go into competition with you and put their product on page 1 and your product back on page 6 and kill your business.
In recent years, lawmakers have started to take action to rein in big tech. The Trump administration kicked the process off by investigating whether these tech giants were engaging in shady practices. Since taking office in 2021, President Joe Biden has continued to aggressively pursue big tech. He appointed officials who are known to be critics of big tech, and the Department of Justice is currently engaged in a lawsuit against Apple and Google for allegedly engaging in practices that the government says violate antitrust laws. Meanwhile, a bipartisan group of senators has proposed legislation known as the American Innovation and Choice Online Act. It would empower the federal government to impose major fines on big tech companies that are engaging in unfair business practices. Now, Congress proposes a lot of legislation, and most of it goes nowhere. But this particular bill seems to have a lot of momentum and support, so it has a decent chance of getting passed and becoming law. However, big tech companies, along with some experts, think that punishing big tech is a bad idea. They warn that breaking up big tech could hurt innovation.
Do you share the government's concerns that any one of these companies, or all of them perhaps, are doing things, abusing their power and influence in such a way that it undermines either the political system, and we've heard about that, or perhaps the consumer economy, and we've heard about that too?
I think these companies are behaving totally legally. They're doing a lot of innovative things.
If you look at our any kind of measure about is Apple a monopoly or not, I don't think anybody reasonable is going to come to the conclusion that Apple's a monopoly. Our share is much more modest. We don't have a dominant position in any market.
It remains to be determined how these lawsuits and legislation will play out. It could turn out that big tech companies end up just getting a slap on the wrist, and nothing really changes. But this is definitely an issue to keep an eye on. And I expect that the regulation debate in Washington will continue as consumers become more and more reliant on the internet and tech giants become even more and more powerful.